I never thought my life could be split in two, into before and after. But that day, it happened. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind of day where the world feels so normal, so safe, that you forget how fragile everything truly is. My little boy, Daniel, was running around the backyard, his laughter spilling into the air like music. I remember thinking, I wish I could freeze this moment forever. I didn't know how close I was to losing it. The moments leading up to it are blurry now, but I remember the sound, a sudden sharp noise that didn't belong in our peaceful world. I ran toward him, my heart already in my throat. He was lying there, so small, so still. I called his name over and over, my voice breaking with a kind of panic I'd never felt before. There's something inside a parent that refuses to accept what their eyes are seeing. I was begging for him to wake up, to open those big brown eyes that always looked at me like I was his whole world. The minutes that followed were a whirlwind of flashing lights, urgent voices, and strangers' hands trying to save him. I clung to hope with every breath, whispering prayers under my breath, bargaining with God, promising anything in exchange for just one more day with him. I didn't care about my own life, my own future. I only wanted his. When the doctors finally looked at me with that expression, the one that says everything without a word, it felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. My body went cold, my ears rang, and I couldn't seem to make sense of the sounds around me. The world had lost all color. My knees gave out, and I crumpled right there, holding his tiny hand in mine. There's no handbook for how to survive the moment your child's life ends. People think the hardest part is the moment of loss, but it's not. It's the breath you take right after. When you realize the world is still turning, people are still walking down the street, the sun is still shining, but your child is gone. That's when you start to feel like you've been left behind in a reality you didn't choose. If this content touches you in any way, please like, subscribe, and comment to help with engagement and help this video reach more people. Now let's continue the story. I remember going home that night, sitting in his room, and touching every little thing he left behind. His blanket still smelled like him. His toy cars were scattered across the carpet, frozen in the middle of whatever game he was playing that morning. I pressed my face into his pillow and wept until I couldn't breathe. The pain was so deep it didn't even feel like pain anymore. It was something heavier, darker, like my soul had been hollowed out. The days blurred together after that. People brought food, sent flowers, and said all the things people say when they don't know what else to say. He's in a better place. God needed another angel. Time heals all wounds. I know they meant well, but those words felt like paper trying to cover a canyon. I didn't want him to be in a better place. I wanted him here. I wanted to feel his arms around my neck when he ran to me after school. I wanted to hear him laugh in the middle of the night because of some silly dream. Every night I'd lay in bed and think, if there's truly a God, if there's truly a heaven, then please, let me see him again. Just once. The longing was so intense it felt like a physical force pulling me toward him. I didn't realize then that my prayer was going to be answered, but not in any way I could have imagined. That day was the end of one life for me, but I didn't know it was also the beginning of something else, something extraordinary, something that would take me beyond the limits of this world. And it all started with the moment I thought I had lost everything. The moment they wheeled Daniel away, I felt like part of me was being carried down that hallway too. I followed as far as they would let me, my hands trembling, my voice cracking as I called his name one last time. He didn't look back. He couldn't. But in that stillness, in that unbearable pause before the doors swung shut, I caught one final glimpse of him. My little boy, my heart, lying so still under the harsh hospital lights. That last glance wasn't like in the movies. There was no slow motion, no dramatic music. It was quiet, clinical, and cold. The air smelled of antiseptic. The walls were a pale, lifeless white, and the only sound was the low hum of machines. But inside me, there was a storm. A scream that wouldn't leave my throat. A desperate, primal need to hold him, to keep him from slipping away into that place I couldn't follow. When the doors closed, the silence felt like a wall between us. My body went numb. I couldn't decide if I wanted to run after him or collapse right there on the floor. I slid down the wall, pulling my knees to my chest, trying to breathe, trying to keep my heart from breaking in half. Nurses passed by, speaking in soft tones, their faces full of pity. I hated that look. The one that says, I know what's about to happen to you. Minutes, or maybe hours, I can't be sure. Later, a doctor came out, His lips were moving, but I barely heard the words. All I could catch were fragments. We did everything we could. No response. I'm so sorry. My ears were ringing, my vision blurred, and my chest tightened until I thought I'd pass out. The last words I remember were my own. No, please, not my baby. They let me in to see him. I walked toward the bed as if every step weighed 100 pounds. His skin was cool, his lips pale, but his face was so peaceful, almost like he was just sleeping, about to wake up and ask for pancakes like he always did on Sundays. I brushed the hair from his forehead and whispered how much I loved him, over and over, as if saying it enough times could bridge the gap between life and death. I kissed his cheek and breathed in that faint, familiar scent of him, a mix of soap, sunshine, and the slightest hint of peanut butter from the sandwich he'd eaten earlier. I tried to etch that moment into my soul, because some part of me knew it was all I had left. That was my last glance, my last touch, my last earthly connection to my son. When they finally led me out of the room, my legs felt like they didn't belong to me. The hallway seemed impossibly long. Every step away from him felt wrong, like I was betraying him by leaving. I kept looking over my shoulder, hoping, praying, for some impossible miracle, that he would sit up, call out, smile at me one more time. But the door stayed closed. That night, I sat alone in the dark, clutching his favorite stuffed bear to my chest. I could still see his face in my mind, still feel the weight of that last glance burning behind my eyes. It was a pain so deep I couldn't speak it aloud. And in that silent darkness, I made a promise to him that if there was a way to find him again, anywhere, anyhow, I would. I didn't know it then, but that promise would lead me somewhere I never imagined. A place beyond that cold hospital room. A place where doors never close, where no one is lost, and where the last glance is never truly the last. The days after Daniel's passing blurred into a heavy, colorless fog. I barely ate. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, not the smiling boy chasing bubbles in the backyard, but the still, pale child lying under hospital lights. It haunted me. My body moved through the motions of living, but inside I felt hollow. Grief has a way of erasing time. Morning bled into night without me noticing. Friends and family tried to help, but I couldn't hear them. I was trapped inside an endless loop of why, and if only. My heart ached so fiercely I began to wonder if a person could truly die from sorrow. And maybe that's exactly what happened. It was late one evening. I hadn't eaten all day, and I felt weak, drained, but it was more than exhaustion. My chest felt tight, like an invisible hand was pressing down on me. My breathing grew shallow. The room seemed to tilt, the edges of my vision dimming. I remember thinking, maybe I'll finally see him again. I was sitting on the couch, clutching the little blue blanket Daniel had loved, when the world around me began to fade. Sounds became muffled, as if I were underwater. My heartbeats slowed until they felt far apart, like distant drum beats. My hands went cold. Then, in one surreal instant, I wasn't in my body anymore. I didn't feel the couch beneath me. I didn't feel the weight of grief crushing my chest. I was floating. Not in the way you float in water, but as if gravity had simply let me go. I could see myself still sitting there, my head slumped forward, the blanket clutched in my lap. But the pain was gone. The air, or whatever I was in, felt alive, shimmering, almost humming. I could move without walking, without effort. And though I didn't understand what was happening, I wasn't afraid. In fact, there was a strange sense of homecoming in it, like stepping back into a place I'd known before but had forgotten. I drifted upward, the walls of my living room becoming transparent, dissolving into a warm, golden glow. There was no ceiling, no sky, just light, endless, soft, and alive. It wasn't harsh like the hospital lights. This light seemed to wrap around me, through me, as if it knew me. And in that moment, I felt the first spark of peace I'd known since losing him. As I rose higher, I realized something. The heaviness I'd carried since that day, the grief, the guilt, the emptiness, had slipped away like an old coat I no longer needed. I was weightless, not just in body, but in soul. And then, I heard it. A sound, faint at first, like the distant ringing of chimes in the wind. It was beautiful, almost impossible to describe, because it wasn't just heard, it was felt. The tones seemed to move through me, filling every empty place inside. Somewhere deep down, I knew. I was crossing over. The world I had known was fading, and something else, Something extraordinary was waiting for me on the other side. I didn't think about whether I'd return. I didn't even wonder how this was happening. There was only one thought in my heart, burning brighter than anything else. Maybe he's here. Maybe my boy is here. And with that hope lighting the path ahead, I let myself drift fully into the unknown. At first, I thought I was simply dreaming. One of those vivid, weightless dreams where you find yourself in places you've never been. But the longer I floated, the more I realized this wasn't a dream at all. Below me, the scene of my living room unfolded like a silent play. I could see my own body still slumped on the couch, my head tilted slightly to the side, Daniel's blanket clutched tightly in my hands. The soft lamplight cast shadows on the walls, and the clock ticked steadily, unaware that time no longer applied to me. I hovered there, studying myself, feeling strangely detached. There was no panic, no rush to return. It was almost like watching a stranger I pitied deeply. I could see the toll grief had taken, the pale skin, the sunken eyes, the way my shoulders sagged under an invisible weight. And I thought, that person is carrying so much pain. No wonder she's leaving. I drifted upward, my point of view expanding. I could see the roof of my home from above, then the neighborhood bathed in the golden haze of streetlights. The quiet streets seemed frozen in time. There was no wind, no distant hum of cars, no barking dogs, just an impossible stillness, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Then, as if some invisible current had taken hold of me, I began to move. I glided effortlessly through the air, passing through the clouds without feeling the slightest chill. The air shimmered around me, not like ordinary daylight, but like sunlight refracted through water, soft, fluid, full of color that didn't exist in the world I knew. As I traveled, I noticed something strange. There was no fear. All my life, I had imagined death as something terrifying, a lonely darkness. But here, it felt gentle, almost like being carried in loving arms toward a place I'd been expected for a long time. Below me, scenes from my life began to appear, not in photographs or flashes, but in living motion. I saw Daniel's first steps, his first day of school, the moment he learned to ride a bike. I saw his face light up when he spotted me waiting at the school gate. I saw the way he'd rest his head on my shoulder when he was tired, trusting me completely. Each memory floated past like a bubble, glowing with its own soft light, and each one filled me with warmth instead of pain. It was as if I could finally see those moments without the shadow of loss hanging over them. Somewhere above, a brighter glow began to form. Not just white, but every color at once, blending into something I couldn't name. The light seemed alive, pulsing gently, calling to me without words. I felt myself leaning toward it, as though my entire being recognized it as home. Then I became aware of something else, or rather, someone. At first, I couldn't see them clearly, but I felt them, like a presence just at the edge of my vision. There was a warmth in this presence, a familiarity that made my heart ache in the most beautiful way. And then, carried on that shimmering air, I heard the faintest sound, a laugh, a small, sweet laugh I knew better than my own heartbeat. It was him. My body, or whatever I was now, surged forward toward the sound, toward the presence I knew was my son. And with each second, the world I had left behind grew dimmer, while the light ahead grew brighter. The light ahead of me swelled, drawing me in with a pull that felt both irresistible and deeply comforting. It wasn't just brightness. It was warmth, love, and peace all woven together into something alive. As I moved closer, I realized it wasn't a shapeless glow at all. It formed a passage, almost like a tunnel, stretching into forever. This wasn't a tunnel made of stone or metal. It was made of light itself, layers of gold, silver, and colors I'd never seen before, swirling gently as if in harmony with some silent music. The walls shimmered and breathed, expanding and contracting in rhythm with my own energy. I could feel it on my skin, or whatever form I had now, like a caress that seeped into every part of me. Each step, or perhaps each thought, drew me further in, and the further I went, the more the heaviness of my earthly life dissolved. Every regret, every ounce of grief, every unanswered question seemed to fall away behind me. And then I began to hear it more clearly. Not the chimes from before, but something deeper, richer. A chorus of voices, soft and harmonious, singing without words. It was as if the tunnel itself was alive and welcoming me home. I glanced back, if back even existed here, and saw my life as a distant point of light, growing smaller. I knew instinctively that I could turn around if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. Ahead of me was the only thing I longed for now. The presence I'd felt earlier was growing stronger. The laugh I had heard was now closer, clearer, echoing down the glowing passage. My heart, yes, somehow I still had one, felt as though it would burst with anticipation. I wasn't just being drawn to the light, I was being drawn to him. As I moved deeper, the tunnel began to shift. The golden tones softened into a gentle white, bright but never blinding. The walls seemed to open wider, and I realized I was no longer floating. I was being carried, as if on a current of love itself. Memories began to drift in and out of the light around me. The way Daniel's hair smelled of summer after playing outside, the way his tiny hand would wrap around my finger, the way he'd shout, "Mommy!" and run into my arms like I was the safest place in the world. These weren't just images. They were living moments. I could feel them, touch them, breathe them in as if they were happening right now. The music grew louder, richer, and suddenly I noticed shapes in the light. At first they were vague, almost translucent, but as I drew closer they became more distinct. Figures, tall, graceful, radiant, lined the edges of the tunnel. They didn't speak, but I felt their greetings, their joy at my arrival, their understanding of everything I had been through. One of them stepped forward slightly, and though I didn't know them from my earthly life, I knew them in my soul. They were here for me, to guide me. I felt no judgment, no questions, only acceptance. And then, I saw him. At the far end of the tunnel, bathed in the purest light, stood my son. His smile was brighter than the sun, his eyes shining with a joy I had never seen on earth. He was dressed in a way I can't quite describe, not in earthly clothes, but in something that seemed woven from the light itself. His little arms were stretched wide, ready to pull me into the embrace I had been aching for since the moment he left. My soul cried out his name, though I don't think I made a sound. And with that, I moved faster than thought, every part of me reaching for him. The moment I reached him, the world, or whatever this place was, seemed to pause. The light grew softer around us, wrapping us in a cocoon that felt like pure love. Daniel's little face was exactly as I remembered it, but more radiant, more alive. His eyes sparkled with a depth I'd never seen before, as if he carried the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes, and yet was still my sweet little boy. He ran the last few steps toward me, and when his hand slipped into mine, it was as if the entire universe aligned. That tiny hand, warm, solid, familiar, erased every ounce of pain I had ever felt. I had thought the day he died was the worst moment of my life, but now, standing here, I realized it was only the doorway to this one, the moment we were together again. I dropped to my knees and pulled him into my arms. He fit perfectly, just as he always had, his head resting against my shoulder. I could feel his heartbeat against me, strong and steady. There was no fragility in him now, no sign of illness or injury, only health, energy, and joy. "Mommy, you made it," he said, his voice clear and musical. It rang in my soul more than in my ears. I don't know how to explain it, but every word here carried both sound and meaning that went deeper than language. I pulled back just enough to look at him. "I've missed you so much," I whispered, though the words felt small compared to what I felt inside. "I know," he said softly, touching my cheek with his small hand, "but I've been with you the whole time. You just couldn't see me." Tears fell freely, though they didn't sting the way earthly tears do. Here, even sorrow felt different, softer, without the sharp edges. It wasn't about losing him anymore. It was about realizing we had never truly been apart. He took my hand again and began to lead me forward. The tunnel was opening into something vast and beautiful. The air shimmered with colors I still can't name, and the ground beneath our feet felt alive, almost breathing. Off in the distance, I could see shapes, other figures moving gracefully, laughter and voices blending into the music of this place. As we walked, Daniel spoke without moving his lips, and yet I heard him perfectly inside me. He told me about a place where children play without ever growing tired, where the sky changes colors like a painting coming to life, and where no one ever cries from pain, only from joy. He told me he had friends here, some he'd known on Earth and others who had never been born into the world I came from. He said time didn't work the same way. There were no days, no nights, just a gentle flow where everything happened in its own perfect moment. Then he stopped and turned to me, his small fingers tightening around mine. "There's someone who wants to see you," he said, his smile widening. I looked ahead, feeling a pull stronger than before, as if this meeting was important beyond my understanding. The light shifted again, revealing a figure approaching from the distance. Tall, radiant, and surrounded by an aura so powerful, I could feel waves of love rolling toward me. But before I could take another step, Daniel squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't be afraid, Mommy. This is why you came." As we moved toward the figure in the distance, the light around us seemed to grow warmer, richer, as if the very air was infused with love. It was unlike anything I had ever felt on Earth, a love so pure it didn't just surround me. It flowed through me, filling every empty place I'd carried for so long. The ground beneath us wasn't solid in the way I knew it, yet it supported us perfectly. It looked like soft, radiant grass, but it shimmered as if woven from threads of light. Every step we took seemed to release a faint musical note, harmonizing with the ever-present melody in the air. When the figure drew closer, I saw that it was a man, tall, graceful, and radiant beyond description. His face shone with kindness, and his eyes held a depth that made me feel both completely known and completely safe. I didn't need an introduction. I knew in my soul that this was someone who had been with me my entire life, unseen but never absent. A guide, perhaps even an angel. "Welcome," he said, though his lips barely moved. The word wasn't just heard, it was felt, reverberating through every part of me. Daniel beamed up at him. "I told her you'd be happy to see her." The man knelt slightly, his gaze meeting mine. "You've carried so much and you've come so far. This is a place where none of that weight can follow you. Here, there is no pain, no loss, only truth, love, and peace." The moment he said it, I realized something incredible. The ache that had been lodged in my chest since Daniel's death was gone. Not dulled, not hidden, but completely gone. The constant heaviness I'd carried like a shadow had simply vanished. In its place was a lightness so freeing it made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. The man stood and gestured for us to follow him. As we walked, I began to notice more of this place. We passed a meadow that stretched endlessly, its flowers glowing softly as if lit from within. I saw children playing together, their laughter mingling with the music in the air. Some were blowing what looked like bubbles, but instead of floating away, the bubbles would burst into tiny sparks of light that rained gently back down to the ground. Farther ahead, I saw people, adults, embracing each other in tearless reunions, their faces glowing with joy. Every person here radiated the same unshakable peace, the same deep, eternal love. Daniel tugged on my hand, pulling me toward a sparkling stream. The water was so clear it looked like liquid crystal, and yet it moved as if it had its own life. When I knelt beside it, I could see my reflection. But it wasn't the tired, grief-worn face I knew. It was me, but whole. My eyes were bright, my skin radiant, my posture strong. It was like looking at the truest version of myself, untouched by sorrow or fear. "This is what you really are," Daniel said, his voice ringing with certainty. "This is who you've always been." I reached into the water, expecting to feel wetness, but instead, I felt warmth, the same warmth as the light around us. It sank into my hand, into my arm, until it filled my whole being. Every part of me felt alive in a way I'd never experienced before. I turned to Daniel, my heart overflowing. If this is here, if this is what it's like, why would anyone ever want to leave? He smiled gently, but there was something in his eyes, a softness, almost a sadness, as he said, "Because some people still have more to do." Before I could ask what he meant, the guide placed his hand lightly on my shoulder. "There's something you need to hear," he said. "Something only Daniel can tell you." The air around us shimmered, and I felt a shift, as if the entire place was leaning in, listening. Daniel took both my hands in his and looked straight into my eyes. "Mommy," he said, "I have a message for you." Daniel held my hands in his small, steady grip, and though his touch felt warm, what I felt most was the strength in it. Not the fragile strength of a child, but something timeless and unshakable. His eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made the rest of the world fade away. "Mommy," he began, his voice gentle yet powerful, "you have to know something important. I'm okay. I've been okay since the moment I got here." The words sank into me, not like a simple reassurance, but like truth itself being planted deep in my soul. He continued, "I didn't suffer. I wasn't scared. One moment I was with you, and the next I was here, surrounded by so much love I couldn't even imagine it before. I was never alone." Tears rolled down my face, though here they felt different, not heavy with despair, but light, almost cleansing. "I've been so afraid for you," I whispered. I've worried about where you were, if you were safe, if you missed me." He shook his head, smiling in that familiar way that always crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'm always with you, Mommy. Even when you can't see me, even when you can't feel me, I'm right there. You just have to be still and listen." I felt my chest loosen, a knot I'd carried since that terrible day slowly unraveling. "But why did you have to go? I wasn't ready to lose you." My voice broke, the old ache still raw even in this perfect place. Daniel's expression softened, and for a moment he looked older, wiser, as if the years he never lived on Earth were written in his soul here. "It wasn't about taking me away from you," he said. "It was about what my life and my leaving would awaken in you. There are things you're meant to do, people you're meant to help. My leaving wasn't an ending, Mommy. It was the beginning of something for you." I shook my head, not understanding. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for that." He squeezed my hands and a wave of warmth surged through me, not from the outside in, but from the inside out, as if he'd unlocked something buried deep within me. "You are," he said simply. "You were chosen to be my mom because you have a heart big enough to love beyond this world. And that love is going to change lives." His words lit something inside me, a spark that cut through the last shadows of doubt. "But how will I know what to do?" I asked. "You'll know," he said with certainty. "When the time comes, you'll feel me guiding you. Every choice you make from love will be the right one. And when your time is done, I'll be the one waiting for you. This isn't goodbye, Mommy. This is just, see you later." I pulled him into my arms, holding him as tightly as I could, wishing I could stay like this forever. And yet, even as I held him, I felt something shifting, a gentle pull, like a tide beginning to draw back toward the shore. Daniel leaned close, whispering in my ear, "You can't stay yet, but remember what I told you. And when you feel me near, believe it's real, because it is." When I opened my eyes, he was smiling at me, that same bright, joyful smile, but behind it was a knowing. He understood I would have to leave, and he wanted me to be ready. The pull began as a gentle tug, like a soft breeze catching my hair. At first, I ignored it, tightening my grip on Daniel's hand, determined not to let go. But the current grew stronger, wrapping around me like invisible threads drawing me backward. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Please, not yet." Daniel's expression was calm, though I could see the sadness in his eyes. He reached up and touched my face, his little palm warm against my skin. "Mommy, you have to go. There's still more for you to do. I'll be with you, always." The light around us seemed to shift, the meadow and the glowing stream blurring at the edges. My heart ached, even in this place beyond pain. I clung to his hand, desperate to memorize every detail. The softness of his skin, the curve of his smile, the sparkle in his eyes. "I'm afraid I'll forget," I confessed, my voice trembling. "You won't," he said firmly. "When you need me, I'll be there. Just listen with your heart, not your ears." The pull became irresistible, like a tide pulling me out to sea. My hand slipped from his, our fingers brushing one last time. The warmth of his touch lingered as I began to drift backward, the brilliant light fading into a softer glow. I could still see him, standing there with his arms raised in goodbye, smiling through the sadness. "I love you, Mommy," his voice echoed inside me, not in sound, but in pure knowing. The light receded, the music softened, and I felt myself falling. It wasn't a painful fall, but it was fast, disorienting. The peace of that world began to fade, replaced by a heavy weight pressing down on me. My senses dulled, the warmth slipping away, replaced by cold air against my skin. Then, with a jolt, I was back. I gasped, my lungs burning as if they'd forgotten how to breathe. The blanket was still in my lap, my cheeks wet with tears. The living room was exactly as I'd left it, the lamp still glowing softly, the clock ticking steadily. But I was different. The heaviness of grief was still there, but now it was layered with something else. A quiet certainty that Daniel was not gone. He was with me, and always would be. The memory of that place, of his words, was carved into my soul so deeply that nothing could erase it. I pressed the blanket to my face and whispered, "I love you too," knowing he could hear me. Somewhere, just beyond the veil, I imagined him smiling. And though I wished with every part of me that I could have stayed, I understood something I hadn't before. My life wasn't over. Not yet. And until that day came, I would carry a piece of heaven in my heart. In the weeks that followed my return, I found myself walking through life with new eyes. The world hadn't changed. The streets were still busy, The seasons still shifted, and people still hurried past one another. But I had changed completely. I no longer saw life as something random, fragile, and easily broken. Instead, I understood it as a journey, one that begins before we're born and continues long after we leave our bodies. I had crossed that threshold. I had seen what waits beyond, and I had held my child's hand in a place where love never ends. Every morning, I would wake and feel the cool light of dawn through the window, and instead of the crushing weight of loss, I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the days I had with Daniel, for the memories that still lived inside me, and for the promise that one day we would be together again. I started talking to him more, not in the way I used to, expecting an answer in sound, but in the quiet of my heart. And in those moments, I would sometimes feel it. A sudden warmth on my shoulder, a gentle whisper in my soul, a flash of joy that felt like his laugh. I knew then that he was keeping his promise. Life still had its trials. There were days when the ache of missing him would swell unexpectedly. Passing a playground, hearing a child call for their mother, seeing the first stars appear at night. But even in those moments, the memory of that place and of Daniel's words anchored me. I no longer feared death, and I no longer saw it as an ending. The truth I carry now is simple, but life-changing. Love is not limited by distance, time, or even death. The bonds we form in this life continue in the next. Our loved ones are not gone. They are simply in a place we can't yet reach. And when our time comes, we will be welcomed home by the ones we've missed so dearly. If you are reading this with an aching heart, if you've lost someone you love, I want you to know what Daniel wanted me to know. They are okay. They are still with you. And one day, you will see them again. Until that day, honor their memory by living with the love they left behind. Because the greatest truth I learned on the other side is this: the love we give and the love we receive is eternal. It is the thread that ties heaven and earth together. And now, from the deepest place in my heart, I thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, if it brought you even a little comfort or hope, please let me know. Click the like button so more hearts can be reached, subscribe so you don't miss more stories of love beyond this life, and share in the comments who you are holding in your heart. Let's keep this space a sanctuary for hope, healing, and the reminder that love never dies.